Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kate Roberts, President and CEO of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. Thanks so much for joining our Monterey Peninsula Election Forum, Part 1, on housing, which will cover the cities of Monterey, Carmel, Sand City, and Pacific Grove. As many of you already know, the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership is a nonprofit, member-supported organization that works across our Tri-County region. Our work focuses on specific initiative areas that are the underpinning for a thriving economy: affordable housing, a strong workforce pipeline, ubiquitous broadband access, and climate change mitigation, which includes transportation improvements. Tonight's candidate forum is part of our advocacy and education work to help increase the supply of housing of all types and income levels across the region. MBEP has been doing nonpartisan election forums for 4 years. Everyone is welcome, and the hope is that the issues are discussed in a way that brings clarity to public policy. The mission of MBEP is to improve the economic health and quality of life in the region, and these types of forums contribute to that mission. I'd like to give a special shout out to MBEP's amazing housing team for their engagement with the jurisdictions represented here tonight by actively providing technical assistance to help meet our region's housing goals. This technical assistance comes in the form of providing recommendations for new development opportunities, and more recently creating a unified response to the COVID-19 pandemic to stabilize the housing conditions on the peninsula. MBEP supports creating a range of housing options, especially more housing affordable to low-income residents. We have designed this forum to focus on key housing issues that need thoughtful leadership from our elected officials. Our goal is to provide this platform for candidates during this election season and to help voters make an informed decision. Many thanks to the Monterey Bay Aquarium and to Barbara Meister in particular for joining us as co-host. Now I'd like to introduce Emily Ham, one of MBEP's stellar housing program associates, and hand the program over to her. Emily.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to part 1 of our Monterey Peninsula Election Forum, where we will be discussing key housing issues with candidates from the city of Monterey, Carmel, Sand City, and Pacific Grove. My name is Emily Ham again, and I'm a member of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership's housing team. And I'm very happy to introduce my colleague and co-host for the evening, Barbara Meister from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Emily.
Thanks so much for being here. Before we begin, I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how local housing policy impacts your staff at the Monterey Bay Aquarium and other members of the workforce in hospitality, tourism, and other service industries on the Monterey Bay Peninsula.
Sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me to work on this issue with you. And before I answer your question, I just want to be clear too, the Monterey Bay Aquarium is a 501c3 nonprofit institution. As such, we do not engage in electoral politics, i.e. I will not be speaking on behalf of any particular candidate. We don't endorse candidates. However, we are able to, with that nonprofit tax status, able to advocate on issues. So you'll hear me talk about housing as an issue. That's very important to us at the aquarium. And the reason why it's important is because prior to COVID anyway, we had nearly 560 employees, mostly full-time. Many of them struggle to pay the rent, to find a mortgage, to even buy a house, and thus we have housing affecting people at all levels, whether they have a GED or all the way to a PhD. Housing is a pressure on our ability to attract and retain the workforce, and as it is for most hospitality workers. I was just talking to one of my colleagues who is still employed at the aquarium. He's busy trying to find a part-time job. Our salary simply will not go far enough, even though we pay relatively well, but it will not go far enough to pay the increasing cost of housing on the peninsula. And then more recently, given the fact that we have had to lay off 200 employees, the rental assistance funding, the eviction protections, I've been advocating for those with you all as well over the last couple months. And those have been critically important, and important that we do those really well so they meet people's needs during this time. So I'm grateful to have been invited to help co-host this with you, Emily.
Great. We're so happy to have you, and thanks again for collaborating with us over the last few months. Your work has been really instrumental to stabilizing housing conditions during the pandemic, and we have a long way to go, most likely, but we're happy to have you on our team. So thank you very much. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the agenda for the evening. I'll briefly explain how this is going to work. First, City Council and mayoral candidates from each jurisdiction will have 2 minutes to present their respective housing agendas. Candidates will get a warning from our timekeepers behind the scenes. They'll get a 30-second warning, and then they'll get another notification at time. So we ask that candidates be aware of that. We will then review responses that we received from a questionnaire that was sent out prior to the show. And then candidates will receive another 3 minutes to clarify any of their responses to that questionnaire and to provide any closing remarks that they choose to provide. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the city of Monterey. And so I would like to now welcome our first candidate for mayor of the city of Monterey, Timothy Barrett, to present his housing agenda. So Timothy?
You need to start my video. Hello? You need to start my video. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay. Hello, thank you for this opportunity. I'm dedicating my participation in tonight's forum to my mother-in-law, Marietta Larson, who needs the support of her family more than ever now, and she's receiving that. My name's Timothy Barrett. Here's some background. The first time I walked into a city council chamber was in 2011, speaking out against immoral housing foreclosures. I walked out of the city with investment portfolios to confirm socially responsible investment of public funds. I was elected to the city council 2 years later and went straight to work passing a responsible banking ordinance, disallowing the city from participating in immoral foreclosures. And I worked to put teeth in our housing element, such as repurposing underperforming buildings and ADUs before the state even required them. Those amendments were officially adopted by the Planning Commission and then derailed through action of the incumbent mayor. Now we need to secure recent accomplishments and go to the next level with a municipal housing trust. This is what I call the Adopt a Downtown initiative. A municipal housing trust can provide capital subsidies, operating subsidies, and support rental assistance programs for those in needs, and free up city staff from having to do those things, which long-term will have a positive impact on our city's budget. We must factor in housing impacts of climate change, food security, and economic equity. But the main point here is identifying a dedicated revenue stream for a municipal housing trust that's capable of supporting real financing options. And if we have time later, I'm hoping to be able to get into, not in lieu of fees, but the city's precedent for citing affordable housing off location from luxury housing. Perhaps we can address that later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy. We really appreciate it. We would now like to invite Mayor Clyde Robertson to present his housing agenda. So Timothy, you can go ahead and turn off your video. Thank you so much.
Okay. Are we ready to go? Barbara, Emily, am I ready to go?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, anyway, hello, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of the accomplishments of the city of Monterey in the past and where we're going to go in the future. I hope you can see my slide. During my 4 terms as a council member and a 5-term mayor, the city has procured 550 permanent affordable housing units. This started way back in the 1980s. Recently, the city completed 2 projects for low-income housing, one on Van Buren and the Monterey Apartments. You can see a picture of Alan and me. You can guess who is who. I'll leave that up to you. And the entire city council has unanimously supported the many programs that we are undertaking right now. The city recently put housing overlays on East Downtown and also in Garden Road. We have 4 RFPs out right now. There's a real good model, and that is where if the public entity, if a city or a school district can provide free land, it makes it very possible to build affordable housing. And we have 4 potential sites that we'll be looking at very shortly. And also using CDBG funding, the city has funded housing and rental assistance, including the Veterans Transition Center and Community Human Services. We're very pleased to have approved distribution of funds on our rental assistance program to keep people in their homes during COVID-19. And being a 35-year teacher and with children who are teachers, I really understand the need for affordable housing for our teaching population, along with others who have a very difficult time living in our area. We have a 20% turnover in NPUSD every year, having to recruit teachers, and a major problem with that, the major cause is affordable housing. So thank you so much. I look forward to continuing our excellent record with my outstanding city council team.
Great. Thank you so much, Clyde. We really appreciate it.
Welcome.
All right, now we're going to move on to our city council candidates. So can we see who is running for city council? So first up, if we could ask Dan to turn on his camera and present his slide.
Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you for this opportunity. Over the past several years, the City Council has created policies that enhance affordable housing, all of which I've supported. We've created high density zoning by turning light industry and industrial and residential, along with increasing building height limits. It has helped to establish affordable housing as a priority in our city. An example of these policies are the Garden Road. We changed a light industry zone to multi-family residential, increased building heights from 3 stories to 4 stories in the downtown specific plan, and dedicated 4 city-owned properties for future 100% affordable housing. As for future policies, there are areas we could explore ways to further address the housing crisis in our city. We need to continue working with nonprofit housing organizations and educational institutions like Mid-Penn Housing and Monterey Peninsula Unified School District to create affordable housing along with workforce housing for our educators. On several current projects in our business districts, we have explored moving residential units to the ground floor of commercial mixed-use developments. During the redevelopment years, many years ago, the city used RDA funds to support affordable housing. I believe we need to return to that commitment by funding city projects that will increase city revenue of low-income, deed-restricted housing. Lastly, someday there will be a new water source. Now's the time to implement as many changes as I suggested to prepare for water that's available. This way, there will be no delay in creating much needed affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate it. We'd now like to invite Zoe to share her housing agenda.
Good evening, thank you. I would like to just talk about a few points, and I would propose that we move more workforce housing closer to multimodal corridors, which would mean moving more housing closer to the North Fremont area where we have biking and buses and other types of use. I'm not sure why my video is not showing up, but that's okay. I would like to see more developments that are multi-use friendly, such as 2200 North Fremont, that's commercial on the bottom and housing on top. Increased housing density that's closer to multimodal corridors for the hope for less car usage and less traffic. Streamlining the ADU approval process. And something that I think the city really could do better on is building more on already existing properties with water. We have some of those and they are not currently being used. And I think we could do a better job of working with local developers to work towards creative solutions to the local housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Gabriella?
Hi there. All right, so I have a lot of ideas because I really do think this is kind of a #1 priority, not just for the city, but the state and the entire nation right now. So some solutions for Monterey. To start with, my vision is to really reverse the gentrification of Monterey that has caused kind of segregation of our city and some of the other cities on the end of the peninsula from the rest of the county. And create a more inclusionary and diverse city that is affordable for different workforces, generations, and cultural groups. So starting out, my agenda will be to work with the Standing Council and county officials to implement Project Home Key funds, which the deadline is this week for those applications, but those funds will hopefully allow us in the future months to house some of the critically vulnerable homeless. Moving forward, I think it's going to be really important in the next few months as well to look at drafting a rent freeze and extending the state eviction moratorium, which is set to expire coming up at the beginning of the year. Rezoning, continue the process of rezoning and spot zoning to allow for projects in new areas. Facilitating employer-sponsored housing projects and creating incentives for employers to provide housing possibly on site in places that where there's space available. Continuing to relax the height restrictions and going even a little bit higher. I think, we have a set border of our city, so our skyline is going to have to change a little bit moving forward if we really want to get serious about housing as many people as possible. Promoting more ADUs, small units, and seeing what we can do to facilitate home sharing to maximize the housing that we already have. It would be really interesting for us to pursue a down payment assistance program moving forward to get younger home buyers into the market. Creating an enhanced density bonus program like other cities in California have been doing, like San Diego, to really maximize the density bonus that's already put in place. And finally, it got a little bit cut off here, but I think you might be able to see it says establishing objective design standards and really streamlining the review process moving forward. Basically, doing everything that we can to build more housing. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Gabriella. And our last candidate from the city of Monterey is Alan Hoffa. Alan, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I'll start over again. So my name is Alan Hoffa. I'm currently the Vice Mayor of Monterey, and I'm running for re-election to City Council. The issue of affordable housing has been my #1 priority, and I'm proud of the progress that we've made. In my time on council, the city has partnered with nonprofits to build 36 new additional affordable units on Van Buren Street and on Alvarado. We've done a number of other things to facilitate affordable housing, including rezone commercial property on Garden Road. That alone could lead to 450 additional new units in the city of Monterey. And I personally lobbied the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District to allocate water for affordable housing there so that we're able to add additional affordable units to that project. I also support using density, height, and parking concessions to increase the affordable, the number of affordable units above what is currently required, which is 20%. So I see that as an incentive to get more affordable, which is what we really need. We're also developing underused city property to be, again, 100% affordable by offering city land and working with a nonprofit. We're looking at 4 properties right now. And I believe we should focus our density in transit corridors near our bike system and near our bus system. And finally, I want to say it isn't just about more housing, it's about affordable housing. And it's also about helping people stay in their homes. So I'm very proud the city of Monterey passed rental assistance this year, and I have plans to fund it in an ongoing manner. So going forward, people do not have to worry about losing their housing because of a job or other financial hardship.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
So now we are going to switch over to the questionnaire portion of the event. And first, I would like to welcome my co-host Barbara back onto the screen. So while we wait for her, I'd like to say thank you so much to all of our Monterey candidates, and remember to stick around so you can have your last 3 minutes to clarify any of these questions and provide your closing remarks. So I heard some really great ideas and look forward to continuing the conversation with many of you. So now we're going to take a look at how you all responded to these questions that we have in front of you. So I'll just read through them quickly. Number 1, would you support upzoning some of the areas to 5 stories in downtown Monterey? Would you support developing all 4 publicly owned sites as high density housing? Do you support the city's policy for prioritizing water for affordable housing? Would you support an increased transient occupancy tax to fund affordable housing specifically? Would you be in favor of putting a bond measure for MPUSD employee housing on the ballot in the future? Do you support the enactment of a local emergency eviction moratorium that goes beyond current state protections? This is AB 3088, and restricts rent increases during the declared state of emergency. And finally, do you support Proposition 15, which is known as Schools and Communities First? So those were the 7 questions that we posed to our Monterey candidates. And let's take a look at how they answered these questions.
All right, let's do.
Okay, great. So I don't know about you, Barbara, but I'm seeing a lot of yeses across the board on this one, on most of the questions.
That's correct. Yeah, a lot of good ideas, a lot of common interest, and you can tell from some of the council members who are incumbents having worked together on a number of these items already from their time in office. I'm curious, though, as we look at where the differences lie, and looking forward to Ms. Carter's elaboration on some of these issues. Looks like maybe she didn't have a chance to reply. But as we look at the differences, mostly around the MPUSD bond measure, that question that was on the to the board of the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District Board a couple of weeks back, questioned whether or not to pursue a bond to finance teacher housing on their property. So why don't we ask the candidates to elaborate on that? But would you maybe say a little bit more about that, Emily? It's like, why did MBEP include that question as part of the survey?
Sure. Yeah, that so school district sponsored housing is an issue that a lot of jurisdictions are looking at right now within our region and also outside of our region. So Monterey Peninsula Unified School District was just the most recent one, and it was really only a matter of one vote and some concerns that this wasn't the appropriate time to put a bond on the ballot, but that doesn't mean that it's exempt in the future. And so we wanted to ask these candidates what they thought about potentially supporting a future measure.
Okay.
And the other area that I'm seeing some difference is in Prop 15. Now this is
Right.
kind of an interesting one because of course it's a state proposition. So we'll all be voting on it in November. But I just wanted to point out that the reason we included this one is because it could really have some influence on our local revenue streams in the future if it's passed. And a lot of that discretionary funding would be decided by city councils and mayors as far as where it's being allocated. So those are why we included those two questions. So maybe we'll turn it back to the candidates now and see if they might want to elaborate on either of those two where there are differences or any of the other questions that we included.
Sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay, so we'll start from the top again with Timothy Barrett. And Timothy, you will now have 3 minutes to clarify any of these questions and to close out and give any final remarks.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we
Hello?
got you.
Okay.
Take it away.
So since these are my closing remarks, I'm going to offer my phone number, 831-277-9505, to follow up on other issues. But my goal, livable communities with housing viable for generations, encouraging people to remain long-term. We must secure and build upon existing housing accomplishments, which the other candidates have enumerated and which I knew they would and support. The next step, a dedicated revenue source for a municipal housing bond or trust. In my hand is an article proving my affordable housing efforts in 2015. This is a March 2016 housing element report describing amendments I supported, which were fully adopted by the Planning Commission, putting teeth in our housing element. These are March 2016 minutes detailing how the incumbent, in a split decision, tabled the housing amendments, an act I believe moved housing efforts backward by years. Here are bylaws that were approved by the state of California in 2017 for a local housing trust fund. These official records prove I'm energized to provide housing for our community. The incumbent had a role in 36 affordable units over 27 years in office. I don't think that's a great record. By the way, I had a role in building the same 36 units in just 4 years. Monterey has 550 units that are affordable. How many are really affordable? My research shows 40 require incomes of 70 to 105,000. 217 require incomes of 55 to 84,000. The rest, not in the ballpark. In other words, none of the affordable housing is affordable to most low-wage workers, which is predominant in Monterey. This is why economic equity should be viewed as access to housing, and why we need more, smaller, less expensive units in our downtowns. The mayor drove our city into a multi-million-dollar fiscal emergency in November of last year, before COVID was a pandemic. I submit if we had more visionary leadership, the half-cent sales tax currently on the ballot could have been viewed as revenue for a municipal housing trust, rather than just trying to keep the city afloat. We need a trust to step up, and where the money comes from is important. The goals of donors must match the people's goals and not encourage gentrification. I'm advocating dedicated public revenue, putting a trust under public oversight, and assuring responsiveness from gap financing to rental assistance. If we can join with MBEP for this, I'm all for it. Also, I'd like to point out the city has a precedent for decoupling affordable housing required for water allocation from affordable units. I oppose in lieu of fees, but the city does have that precedent in which developers can build affordable housing off-site at unspecified locations that allow affordable housing to be non-integrated and perhaps built in the most challenged areas. For example, vulnerable to storm surges from sea level rise. we have to be vigilant on all these fronts. It's an issue of equity and integration, and we really need to watch all the issues around affordable housing, not just current accomplishments. We need to secure those, but let's get to the next level.
Great. Thank you so much, Timothy. We'd now like to invite back Mayor Clyde to clarify any of his responses to the questions and give his final remarks. Mayor Robertson, are you still there?
Okay, you know what? I've done enough of these. You think I'd figure out how to unmute myself and start the video.
That's okay. We're all still learning. Take it away.
Yeah. Instead of saying, hey, I'll be seeing you, now we can say, I'll be Zooming you. We're going to have a new word in the Oxford English Dictionary. Anyway, I digress. So thank you for having me back. Let's go back to 1981 when the concept of inclusionary housing was first introduced statewide. And I can remember being a candidate, and we were talking about in the city of Monterey of having 5% inclusionary housing. And what that meant was that any new development that came into the city, the private developer would be required to make 5% of that affordable. And I can tell you that I was supported that way back in 1981, and it wasn't very popular back in the day. And I can remember being at several forums where people just thought that was totally unheard of. Then over the years, we raised it from 5%, 10% to 15%. And currently the state will allow 20%, but that requires some other criteria. That's where the 550 units came from. It's really an honor for me and very humbling because I get to sign escrow papers. And I go and sign escrow papers down at Chicago Title. And I've signed papers where people have been able to get a condo, a housing unit for $150,000 to $170,000 because of this city program. And over again, my friends Kim and Kate who work at the title company say the recipients of these homes are absolutely elated. They are tickled pink, to use the term. And so that's where these units have come from. And also, as a teacher, I'm very aware of the need for affordable housing. Again, back in the day, I was able to afford a home in Monterey on a teacher's salary. I'll let that sink in for a minute. That's obviously not going to happen. So this is why we need public-private partnerships. A good example is the Van Buren Apartments, where the city provided the land and we had several partners who were able to raise the money. And that's a really good model. That's one that I think we need to do going forward. So I'm excited to find out how we're going to do on our new affordable housing projects on city land in the city of Monterey. That's 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We appreciate it. Thank you to both of our mayoral candidates for the city of Monterey. Now we will let our city council candidates have 3 minutes each to address any of the questions in the questionnaire and to provide their closing remarks. So in the same order, Dan?
Thank you. As a former 31-year retiree from Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, and I was a part of the last facilities bonds, actually the last 2 facilities bonds. I just wanted to make a comment on MPUSD's choice to look at a bond measure for teacher housing. I was a high school principal for just about 10 years, and one of my jobs was to hire and retain teachers, meaning retain teachers. And just about every year, a brand new teacher would last about 1 full year and then come into my office and say, look, I really love the city of Monterey. I love being here, but I can't afford to live here. It's just too expensive. And that doesn't stop there. It's also at the administrative level too. So I understand that bonds are very difficult to pass at times, and this one would probably be a hard sell in the fact that MPUSD already has 2 bonds out there. But I do think it's very important that we have housing for our teachers because good teachers reflect excellent students. And so for me, I would like to see if that bond is put towards the electorate. It would be that they would try and find other funding to make sure that they can match those funds so that they can use it wisely and efficiently. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the city's policy on prioritizing water for affordable housing. You know, over the past 4 years, the City Council has approved water allocations for affordable housing, and all of which I supported. When new water is developed on Monterey Peninsula, which I hope is soon, we will continue to support city allocations for affordable housing. And because housing in general does not happen without water. So it's important that we get to the ones that make decisions on our water projects, that we get something passed and get it quickly, whatever it is. And the politics needs to stay out of it because we're not going to get affordable housing without water. The last thing is I just wanted to mention that during these tough times that we really need an experienced, cohesive council, and we currently have that one. And as a council member, I'll continue to focus on safeguarding the exceptional quality of the life in Monterey and support economic growth along with increasing affordable housing, which I've already mentioned that we need, practicing balance, common sense, collaborative decisions in order to get things done, and strengthen the City of Monterey's position as a regional leader. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate it. Zoe?
Thank you for having me. I would just like to say that I think that these are good ideas, but I'm not so sure that all of them can be achieved in any significant close timeline. And I didn't answer them because I feel like we need to do more work towards having more conversations with the community and all of the stakeholders around all of these issues. And I'm not going to commit to a yes or no on something that I don't have enough information on. And as someone who needs to commit to working with stakeholders on these issues, I feel like it's important before you take a line in the sand on either side, you have to do the research and know what all of the issues and what all of the potential pieces could be on these issues. And I think that's important. So yes, I did abstain on all of them, and I think that's clear. And I think they're all good ideas, but I just don't feel like I'm in a place where I can say yes or no. I think that's where I am right now. So I think MBEP does a great job at working on housing issues, and I respect the work that you all do. And I look forward to working more on housing with MBEP. I think that Monterey has a long way to go on our working towards our workforce housing and what that looks like and how we can get more creative around our workforce housing and how we build on what we have and our sites and our water that already exists and our water that may be coming, so we can have our units that we need to meet our RHNA goals and support our workforce that we have and our workforce that's coming and our density that's coming and our needs that our community has. I think that's very important. And we need to be getting more creative. The council has done a good job, but we have to get more creative with what we've got. And I don't see our council doing that. I respect that they're a team that works together, but I think that we need new voices at the table and we need new people and we need fresh ideas. So that's what this campaign's about. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Zoe. And now Alan.
Okay, thank you. So I am running for re-election to Monterey City Council because this city council is making progress on affordable housing, which is my #1 issue. I also believe that experience matters. Commitment and proven commitment to the issue of affordable housing matters. Relationships, having relationships with other elected officials matters because that's how you get things done. And having the right skill set, in particular, being able to work collaboratively with others to accomplish your goals is very important. The city's making progress. It isn't only 36 affordable units, but we're also right on the cusp of building anywhere from 150 to 250 new units in the city. If you look at both Garden Road and if you look at the East Downtown, we also have a number of projects coming online in different phases of development on North Fremont. So I want to keep that progress going, and I would appreciate your vote to help me do that. If you want to know more about my campaign, please go to electhoffa.org, and I'd love to hear more from you about your ideas. I mentioned the skills, and Dan, I think, also touched on this. The skill of being able to work collaboratively as a team. You can have all kinds of fresh ideas and great ideas, but if you can't build the support in the community, and if you can't build support on the council, you won't accomplish those. Right now, we are working together with our community, with our staff, and with each other. I didn't just discover this issue. I've been involved in affordable housing for a long time. Just 2 years ago, I co-hosted a forum on affordable housing in Monterey with Tyler Williamson. We invited Matt Huerta from MBEP. It was a great event. I had an opportunity to visit with Congressman Panetta a year ago, along with housing advocates, and have a conversation about how the federal government can help us. And I've been involved on the Fort Ord Reuse Authority in terms of trying to allocate land in a way to build more affordable housing, and I've constantly advocated for that there. So I have the experience, I have the personal relationships with, for example, Senator Monning, who's endorsed me, Assemblymember Mark Stone, who's endorsed me, rental rights advocates groups such as the Monterey Peninsula Renters United and Monterey Bay Renters Coalition, as well as the realtors. So the people who build, the people who rent, and the people who build, the Santa Cruz Building and Trades have endorsed me. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Alan. And a big virtual round of applause for all of our candidates for the City of Monterey City Council and Mayor. And now I will hand it off to my co-host.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to go.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Gabriella, please finish us off.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I said yes on all of these measures because, like I said, I think that this is kind of an existential moment in our nation's history where we kind of have to decide what sort of society we want to have and who we want to be. And this time has shown us more than ever what's really essential our society, and housing is kind of one of those things where it's really, touches every single life that we're, are governing as a council. I decided on because I think that a city should be, governed by a representative body, and that all different walks of life and different parts of society should be involved in our government. And that for me, I just realized when I looked at the city council, I didn't feel like I see that in the current government that we have. There's a lot of groups that are not represented. There's, we don't have districts in our city, so almost four of the current council members all live in the same part of town, and I live on a completely different part of the area. I represent a younger generation. I represent an immigrant generation. My family is from South America. We have, you know, a multicultural city. We need greater voices at the table, and I wanted to inspire also other people to get more involved in our city government and coming together to address these issues as a collective. You know, it's a time for everyone to lean in and do everything that they can do to, like I said, build the society that we actually really want. So I don't think that we can leave any stone unturned when it comes to housing people. It's more necessary than ever. It's always been necessary, but we can't keep waiting around. And I totally appreciate everything that the current council has done, and I'm not going to reverse any of it. I want to just take it further. So I will hopefully have that I can do to better my community and provide a city that is inclusive and affordable to those who have been running our economy up until this point and doing everything day to day that we need. So I'm so pleased to have been here with you all, and thank you so much for listening to some of my ideas.
Thank you so much, Gabriella, and my apologies again. I appreciate you speaking up. So now a virtual round of applause for all of our Monterey candidates. Thank you all for being here. We so appreciate it. You can review more of their materials in our event recap after the show. And now I would like to hand it off to my co-host, Barbara Meister, so she can facilitate the conversation with the candidates from the city of Carmel. So Barbara?
All right, thank you, Emily. And thank you once again, City of Monterey mayoral candidates and city council candidates. We really appreciate you stepping up to serve. It's a difficult job to do, especially right now. So we appreciate all the interest, and we appreciate all of you coming and engaging with us in these very important issues as it has to do with housing. So thank you again. Let's move on to Carmel, another very important city on our peninsula. And what we will do is basically the same agenda. We want to ask each candidate to start by giving their 2-minute overview with their slide. And you will also note that we have invited all the candidates. Not all of them chose to come tonight for various reasons, but we really are excited and welcome those that have joined us tonight. So we will begin with current mayoral candidate, Dave Potter. And as soon as we get Dave's slide there, all right, take it away, Mayor Potter.
Thank you, Barbara. Nice to see you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'll get to the point real quickly. I've been involved in just about every possible land use battle there could be over my political career. I was 10 years for the city of Monterey, and I've been involved both city, county, state, and federal. I was with the city of Monterey for 10 years, 4 years on the Architecture Review Committee, 2 on the Planning Commission, 4 on council. I was on the Board of Supervisors for 20 years. I was on the Coastal Commission for 13 years. I was on the Florida Reviews Authority for 24 years. I was on the Transportation Agency, still am on the Transportation Agency, coming up on 22 years. I was on the, and I'm still on the Water Management District after 22 years. And I was with the federal government helping the nation of Croatia rebuild their economy after the war with the city of Dubrovnik. So I've been around for a while, and I've really learned that the most controversial issue that's out there is land use and where is the right place to develop. Carmel is very, very challenged. We're only 1.1 square miles. Our average lot size is about 400 square feet, 40 by 100, maybe 50 by 100 if you're lucky. And the average medium home price is debatable, but the last time I checked, it's about $1.5 million. So affordable housing is a little bit of a foreign term to the city of Carmel, but I believe that we've done the best we can, and we continue to do well in trying to move that ball forward. We just recently, with the collective wisdom of the council, we went ahead and said that our only affordable housing is downtown short-term rentals. And what we did was we said that we were not going to see any short-term rentals at all. We wanted to keep that as rental housing. There was a move to convert the most affordable housing, which are rentals, from maybe $1,500 or $1,800 a month for a studio apartment to $3,000 a weekend rental. That's not right. We were able to say very clearly, we don't want that happening. We've gone ahead and said that there's an opportunity for some other development in town. One of the places I believe we've got an opportunity is in the, what are you pointing at? Is that there's an opportunity to go ahead and do some development with the private sector. The north lot at the Sunset Center stands out as an example. The foundation has created some great units in the town too, that make a big difference for affordable housing. And I think we've got an opportunity to go ahead with the private sector and move forward. But I will say that it's a challenge. I think that we've got the ability to maintain our community character. And I'll be real candid with you. One of the things I have a serious problem with is being told by the state how we are supposed to deal with our local land use issues. To say that I bought a house and all of a sudden there's a triplex in my backyard that has parking impacts, noise, circulation issues is a challenge. So I think that the best people to make the decisions on affordable housing are the people in the community. I think we can do it in Carmel. We've done it before. I look forward to continuing to do it.
Thank you, Mayor Potter. Appreciate you being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Great. We'll proceed now to hear from the candidates for City Council. And we're doing these in alphabetical order if you haven't noticed. So our next presenter tonight is candidate Karen Ferlito. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Hi. Well, this already is an exciting evening because I'm learning a lot about what other jurisdictions are doing. And as a new council candidate, that's really rewarding to be able to look at what other communities are doing. As Dave pointed out, Carmel has serious limitations due to the small lots and the high price of real estate. The only real affordable housing in our village at this time are a few rentals downtown and the Carmel Foundation housing. And this is a shame because we do have people working in our community that have to leave every day. We have teachers that can't afford to be here. Most of our staff can't afford to live here. That's our police, our firemen, and all our city workers. And I do believe that when your staff can live in the town that they take care of, it's a much healthier situation. I do support the following. I support construction of more ADUs in the residential neighborhoods, particularly if they are kept as affordable rentals rather than just luxury guest homes or illegal short-term rentals.
Just give me a second. I want to leave the meeting.
I also approve or would like to look at using vacant city-owned lots and parking lots as opportunities to build affordable housing redevelopment downtown, and to include looking at adding third-story apartments for some buildings. I support the reuse of vacant city buildings as a possibility to provide affordable housing. We have never gotten our act together to do much with the Scout House, and it sits in our downtown area, and it could possibly be a multifamily situation. I like the idea of affordable housing on top of the Public Works building as a possible option. That building was built to support another building on top, so it might be a really good option. Underneath the Vista Lobos property, there are some big storage units. Perhaps those could be not restored, but reconfigured to actually be some sort of townhouses. And the other thing, we have a lot of existing hotels in town, and with this present pandemic challenge, we don't know the future of all of those hotels. So at some point, some of those hotels, particularly up in the northern eastern area, might become available.
Okay, excuse me, Karen. You have used your time for 2 minutes, so pardon me, but we'll need to move on. You will have time again at the end of this section.
Thank you. I was a little surprised by Alan popping in the middle of it, so
yeah,
be back a second.
Thank you for your understanding. Okay, next we have with us candidate Bobby Richards for City Council. Bobby, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, thank you. Okay, well, thanks for bringing up such an important topic. And so I'm kind of honed in on one particular area for affordable housing.
Bobby, you sound a little bit far away. Is it possible to bring your microphone closer?
Sure. Is this better? Now?
That's a little bit better. Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, I'll speak a little louder too. So thank you for having this. It's a very important issue or topic. And so I'm glad that we're going to be able to talk about it a little bit. I am really honed in on the fact that we have a lot of office space right now on the second stories of many of the retail shops. And I would like to see those turned into some sort of workforce housing. I've been involved in, the hotel industry, so hospitality for over 20 years, and now I'm in the restaurant business. But both of these require many people, many of my team, to work there. They can't afford to live here. I would say probably 95% of my employees work out of the area, and I'd like to see that change, because if we can get them downtown, then that's better for traffic, it's better for pollution, so many different reasons, but it also will help our town thrive. And so what I focused on is downtown is to get some of these office buildings, the owners to understand that we would be able to waive the in lieu of parking, or we would be able to help them create incentives that would benefit them in that they can have maybe discounted permits, or the different fees that go along with doing any sort of renovation to a building. So I'd like to see us work on that. And we did work hard to get that short-term rental stopped in the downtown area, which will provide more affordable housing in the downtown area. I'm very proud of that. That was a big hurdle that luckily Mayor Potter was able to bring that to the agenda, and together we fought to get that short-term rental discontinued in the downtown area. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Bobby. And next we have candidate Graham Robertson. Go ahead, Graham.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Graham Robertson, and I'm a candidate for the Carmel by the Sea City Council. My family has lived in this community for over 5.5 decades. And my top priorities, and it all relates to housing, is protecting the character of our village, safety, the post-COVID reopening of Carmel by the Sea, and the financial management in light of reduced revenues. I think we can make great strides in the affordable housing area by working with our planning and building department and making sure that that department is fully staffed to process any applications, both residentially and commercially, that are in progress. We need to have an experienced staff in there, and I think there's an opportunity to build on the staff that's there. As it relates to affordable housing, the Carmel Foundation has done a great job with the 50 units that they have downtown at Trevette Court and the other locations that they have. I think we can continue to work with them and other property owners in town that have incentives to produce affordable housing for our senior community. I think another important component is workforce housing. And I think by looking at the existing underutilized properties that we have in town, and there's quite a few, that we can do a hybrid to create some type of workforce housing for the important workers that are in Carmel. Not only our city staff, but also those that work in the retail establishments, the restaurants, and in hospitality in general. So I think there's a big opportunity here, and as Dave said earlier on, with a median price of $1.5 million and the average size of a lot in Carmel at 4,000 square feet, I think we're going to have to get creative, and I think we're going to need to listen to all the stakeholders in the community to come up with a plan that is acceptable for everyone. So I believe I've got the collaborative listening and teamwork skills to be able to do that, and I'd appreciate your support.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Robertson. All right, there's a lot of creative ideas for a city that's what, only a mile wide and in size. Housing is a challenge in cities large and small, as we know. So great to hear those ideas. We also asked you a set of questions, as we did each of the candidates from each city. So I'd like to review those for our audience here, and then we'll do a summary of your responses to those and ask you to elaborate on them. First of all, we asked you if you'd support reducing or waiving parking requirements as one way of satisfying the means of getting to affordable housing. Second, would you support an increase in the transit occupancy tax to fund affordable housing specifically? We also asked if in the future there might be a Carmel Unified School District bond measure to fund CUSD employee housing on the ballot, and how would you feel about that? Fourth, would you support the creation of an inclusionary housing ordinance in Carmel? Fifth, we asked if you support the enactment of a local emergency eviction moratorium that goes beyond the state protections, AB 3088 that just passed, and restricts rent increases during the declared state of emergency. And then finally, we asked if you support Proposition 15, known as the Schools and Communities First proposition on our statewide ballot. Can we see the summary of the responses? Here we go. And are you with me, Emily?
I am, yes.
Great. So as we look at this, what stands out to you? And remember, the reason why we ask these questions and are having this discussion tonight is really to identify where are the differences in the candidates, right? All of you have motivation and talent and experience, but where do you stand on these important issues of housing? And that's why we asked these questions. So what stands out as worthy of our conversation in the next few minutes, Emily?
So the first thing that jumps out at me is the issue of parking requirements, which we know is a big one in Carmel. It's a very unique city, the way it's structured. So parking is a big deal. So I see that everyone, let's see how they answered. Yeah, slightly different for all of the candidates here. And then the other issue that stood out to me was on the inclusionary ordinance. So we have 3 of the candidates who chose to abstain and 1 who said no to the inclusionary ordinance. So I would love to hear a little bit more from the candidates on those questions.
Okay.
For people.
Could you also describe, for some people who may not be involved in all the wonky details of housing policy, say a little bit more about these 2 policy ideas. What about them enables them or would encourage more affordable housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we know that parking and commuter traffic is really a big deal in Carmel, but everywhere on the peninsula. So some city governments choose to actually waive or reduce the number of lots that a developer might have to include in a new development as a way to lower the barriers for development and also to incentivize alternative modes of transportation. So that's where the parking requirement question comes from. And then an inclusionary housing ordinance is another tool that a city government can use to mandate a certain percentage of affordable units that are required in a new multifamily housing development. Some cities on the peninsula already have one in place, and Carmel has some rough language around it in their housing element, but it's not quite specific enough to call an inclusionary ordinance.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we'll turn back to our candidates and would ask you if you could elaborate on those distinctions as you responded to our survey. Each of you be given 3 minutes to respond, and we'll take it in the same order as we started. And this also would serve as your closing comments for this portion of our evening. So we'll begin again with Mayor Potter.
Let me go through the list real quickly here, okay? You want a video too? Okay, you're not letting me in for a video, which is fine with me. I don't look that good on film anyway. Okay, so would I waive parking requirements? I'm not interested in doing that in the residential area, especially with ADUs. Each house is built with the restrictions that they face on parking. Parking is a problem. I happen to live about 2 houses out of the commercial area. I am constantly having workers park in front of or visitors parking in front of my house. That is a common problem, whether you're down by the beach or whether you're near the commercial area. So I don't want to do that. Raising the TOT, I don't think this is a good time to tax an industry that's already suffering. Yes, on Carmel Unified Measure, I support that. On the inclusionary housing ordinance, actually we have what's called a density bonus, where we allow you additional density if you go ahead and provide the right amount of inclusionary units. So if you have, if you're going to go to, you'll get 33 to 34 dwelling units per acre, with the 20% affordable, 20% and 10% low. And if you want to go 100% affordable, you can go to 45 or 88 units per acre. That's an incentive, not a penalty. I think that's a good way to drive the building community. Eviction ordinance, yes, I'm not in favor of bouncing anybody out right now. And I must have hit the wrong box in Prop 15. I'm not in favor of Prop 15 right now. I don't think it's a good time to go ahead and raise rates, go ahead and raise the taxes on properties that are already suffering. We've got landlords in downtown Carmel right now who won't even work with their realtor, with their tenants on their rents. And to go ahead and then say, okay, we're going to raise your property taxes and expect you to even be more kindly to your tenants, I don't think that's going to happen. Now is not a good time to revisit Prop 13. Those are pretty much my issues. I do think that we've got opportunities in Carmel. I don't think we're handicapped 100%, but I do think we're going to have to bring the community together to get them to understand that our workforce is living in downtown Carmel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate you going through all of those items with us to clarify your position.
Within the time limit too, I think.
You did great. Thank you very much.
Speed reading.
Set a good standard for the rest of us. Very good.
Short
all right.
meetings.
Thank you again. Okay, next, let's hear again from Karen Ferlito, and you have 3 minutes.
Oops. My video will not start.
Our staff should be able to turn that on for you. Maya, if you could make sure Karen's video is on. There we go. And now we also need to unmute Karen.
Okay.
You're ready.
Except I don't see my, oh, there I am. Okay, I'd like to explain why I abstained from the reduce or waive parking requirements. We already walk in the street in the residential areas. We walk in and around and among cars. Speeds are up these days for some reason, and to put more cars out into our public streets makes it just that much more hazardous. Years ago, the city of Carmel actually begged the post office to deliver mail, and the mail postmaster at that time, this was back in the 30s, said, no, I won't put the mailman out there because there aren't any sidewalks. Now, I'm not saying I want sidewalks, but I don't think adding more cars to our streets is a very safe way to go. I probably would be in favor of raising the TOT at some time. I think that would require some discussion, and probably not until our economy recovers a little bit from this terrible pandemic challenge that we're on. Yes, I would support a Carmel Unified Bond measure. The local eviction moratorium, yes, I think that this is not the time to put people out on the street. And I do support Prop 15. I think it's time that some of these commercial properties that have been since Prop 13 not paying completely their fair share could pony up some more money for the greater good, and particularly for housing. The inclusionary ordinance, we don't have very big developments in Carmel. We've had one on the corner of 5th and Dolores now sitting for quite a while. That's probably the biggest development we'll ever see. And it was required to have a few units. But I think we have to look to some creative ideas to match up empty properties with maybe perhaps caretakers that can take care of some of those properties if they have an ADU. And I think a program to match up some of our senior citizens with younger people who need places to live and who have extra room in their homes or perhaps ADUs. And those younger people can help them with their shopping needs and some of their travel needs. I think that programs like that could be developed and create some more affordable opportunities. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Karen. I appreciate that, those creative ideas. Next, let's turn to candidate for council, Bobby Richards. You have 3 minutes as well.
Okay, thank you. I do have to clarify that the number with the local eviction moratorium was a no for me. But I'll go down the list as Mayor Potter did. So reduce or waive parking requirements. I said yes, because of my focus on the downtown area. I would not like one of these office buildings not to be able to get a permit because they couldn't provide parking. So I would have to say yes on that. The raise the TOT, I abstained from that because that's really not in my control. As a council member, that a vote to earmark dollars that we're going to tax TOT, that has to go out to the public. That's voted on by the citizens. So that would just, that's why I abstained from that one. It needs to be voted on by the citizens. Carmel Unified Bond, I said yes. Inclusionary Ordinance, I said no. The reason why I said no for that was, let's see, I feel like the city is small enough that we can do it on a case-by-case basis. Now, normally I don't like that ambiguity of the case-by-case, but for an ordinance like that, I think that we could work better for the citizens if we could see each individual. We're small enough that we could see each individual program. The local eviction moratorium, that's when I said no. I think that we should be in line with our neighbors and how the state will mandate that. And so that's why I would say no. Prop 15, I say no to that because I think that it will really crush any of the small businesses that have a triple net lease right now. Because if that triple net lease it could triple their rent, and I think that would really hurt the small businesses. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Sorry if we made that error and incorrectly recorded your position on extending local eviction moratorium. So that should be a no and not a yes.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. I know you got this pretty late in the day, so sorry about that.
Well, we're glad you're able to join us and glad you're able to clarify your position on all these important elements of affordable housing policy. So thank you. So last but not least, Graham Robertson, if you would please elaborate on your position.
Right, and I will, first of all, thank you for the opportunity this evening to speak to you all, and I'll follow suit with the folks that just spoke from Carmel and just tick down the list one at a time. In terms of the reduced wave parking requirements, I said yes on that. I believe that we should sit down with each individual project developer and hear, what the project's going to be and see if there's any opportunities to reduce or waive those parking requirements. We've had a parking issue in Carmel for 104 years, and we'll probably have it for many years to come. So having a discussion with developers about that on their particular projects, I think will be important, and important for us to listen to them. In terms of raising the TOT, we're obviously coming out of this post-COVID time in a very difficult economic situation. Raising the TOT, I think, would be detrimental to visitors coming to Carmel. We want to encourage people to come and make it an affordable trip. And so I would not be in favor of raising the TOT. But like Bobby said, that really is not a council decision. That's one that needs to go out to the voters. In terms of the Carmel Unified Bond Measure, I said yes to that. But I think we need to work closely with the county in that, because all the schools in the Carmel Unified School District fall outside of the city of Carmel. So I think having that discussion with the county and then supporting that bond measure, if that's where we all want to go, would be important. I abstained on the inclusionary housing. The local eviction moratorium, I think we need to follow the state guidelines that have been put in place and then implement those as appropriate. Proposition 15, I said no on that. The reason for that is that if the commercial property owners get taxed on the present market value of their properties, they're going to raise the rents and to the tenants. And we have enough business vacancies in Carmel right now. It's an expensive place to do business, and that would be detrimental to any future success that a business might have in Carmel. So I would say no on Proposition 15. In closing, I thank you again for the opportunity, and I think I can take my prior experience to make a positive impact immediately on the City Council. Thank you, Barbara.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all, candidates for City Council of Carmel. There are definite challenges ahead of us COVID and non-COVID as it relates to affordable housing and housing our workforce as well as our existing citizens. Very much appreciate your taking your time to be with us tonight to respond to our survey questions, and we look forward to working with you, whoever should get elected come this November. So thank you again, and let's give a virtual round of applause to our candidates for Mayor of Carmel and City Council of Carmel, and we will allow you to excuse yourselves and go on with campaigning. And then we will move on to, we have 2 more cities tonight, Sand City and then Pacific Grove. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Emily to lead us through the candidates for City Council in Sand City. Thank you again, Carmel.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. And yes, thank you to our Carmel candidates. We so appreciate it. So now we would like to move on to the city of Sand City. I don't know if you say city of Sand City. Perhaps one of you can clarify for me. Well, the only one of you can clarify for me. So I'd like to welcome the only candidate who has attended this evening onto the screen to provide his housing agenda, and that's Gregory Hawthorne.
All right, can you hear me okay? I can't see myself here. Okay, let's start my video.
Yep, we can hear you and see you, so take it away.
All right, great. So Sand City, as you all know, thank you, by the way, Barbara and Emily, I appreciate it. Sand City has the smallest population of all the cities on the coast here. We're only 381 people. It's hard to believe when you're comparing it to Carmel, Monterey, and even Pacific Grove. But one of the things that is great about Sand City is that we have just approved with our city council, it's been 20 years coming through, as the south of Tioga, which is going to be 358 new housing units that are going to be built. This is going to be, a lot of it's going to be workforce housing units so that you'll be able to see, you have a lot of that can come in there. We're going to triple our population. We have 50 low-cost housing units, and they're interspersed. Nobody knows where they are, so that people don't feel like they're living, that these are the low-cost properties when they're intermixed right through the buildings. We're going to have our first hotel, so we'll finally have a TOT tax. We are different. We're only a half-mile wide and a mile in length, so we're very small, but we can go vertically. We have our own desal plant. We have our own water. So we've been planning for this, and we've been working with all of our commercial as well as residential people to get all these things finished. We are going to not only increase our housing, but we're going to work on our infrastructure. We want to be the first city that buries all our power lines. We want to increase the city aesthetics by introducing more sculpture and more, right now we have a mural project that just started today. It'll be done in a week. We're doing 10 new murals, huge murals that are going up in the city. And we have national artists that are coming in to do these, as well as 7 national artists and 6 local artists. It's going to be a great project. So anyway, this is what we're going to talk about. And I hope that's going to be great for you guys and you appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Gregory. We really appreciate it. And feel free to stay on the screen. We're just going to go right into the questions that we asked you. So I'll just read them really quickly out loud. That some of them are the same as the ones that we asked in the other jurisdictions. But just as a reminder, we asked Gregory, would you support reducing or waiving parking requirements in the city of Sand City? Is that correct? Do you say city of Sand City, Gregory? Or is that redundant?
City of Sand. No, city of Sand City. That's correct.
Okay, great. Would you support an increased transient occupancy tax to fund affordable housing? Would you be in favor of putting a bond measure for MPUSD employee housing on the ballot in the future? Do you support the enactment of a local emergency eviction moratorium that goes beyond current state protections and restricts rent increases during the declared state of emergency? And finally, do you support Proposition 15, known as Schools and Communities First? So let's take a look at how you answered the questions. And I'll just give you the floor for this one if you want to go ahead and give us any explanation, any clarifying points on these questions, and also your closing remarks. So you'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so I believe that reducing waiving parking requirements is an important thing, especially for our new units. We actually have demanded that they have parking, and we have, I think it's 1.5 spots per unit that's being built, which is way above the state requirement. But we need to encourage people to use the mass transit system, and that's what I really want to push in Sand City for our new developments. Raise the TOT tax. We don't have any TOT tax. This is going to be our first hotel that we're going to have in Sand City. So when we have that first hotel, I want to see at 12%. We don't need to raise it right now. What we need to do is to see how it works. The bond measure, yes, that would be great, because we need to help teachers and our educators for the future. And it's a necessary thing for Sand City and for all the area. Local eviction moratorium, I would like to have that, but at the same time, we really have to be careful and make sure that all the people that own the businesses have all these buildings where that they have mortgages on, which people are renting from. We want to make sure that they're covered too. We can't just cover one side without covering the other. And that's an important part of this whole development thing. And Prop 15, no way. Prop 15 is at the absolute wrong time, wrong place, everything. What it is it's a breakdown. They start with Prop 15. They like to break down Prop 13, which is for the living. But Prop 15 is not necessary at this time because it will, business, because of COVID, because all different kinds of things, it's a dangerous precedent. No, definitely no. But I think that we can do a lot of things in Sand City that helps the Monterey Peninsula. If we can get our hotel done, then we can help them as far as having conventions. We get more worker housing, we can help each of the cities that in Carmel and Monterey and everything else, they need help as far as places for their workers to go. So we want to be part of that, help you as well as help ourselves. And it's going to be great. So everybody can come over to Costco and shop and then have a place to live too in Sand City. We're looking forward to this. I really want to thank you for taking the time and having all of us come out and speak. And I hope that we get a lot of great people that come in. And I'm an incumbent in Sand City. And I hope that I still stay there so I can make sure these are all finished, which I helped start. And I want to get these all finished for Sand City. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Gregory. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's exciting to see what you are doing in Sand City, and thank you for your leadership over these years, and carry on.
Thank you.
Great. So we are on to our final city jurisdiction of the night, and that's the city of Pacific Grove. So Barbara, I'll hand it over to you to facilitate these candidates.
All right, wonderful. This is our last group of candidates tonight, and we thank you all for hanging in there this long. We are excited to present to you this slate of candidates and engage with you all in the questions as it relates to opportunities to create more affordable housing on the peninsula and in Pacific Grove specifically. With us to begin with is Mayor Bill Peake, an incumbent and running unopposed, but we're so glad he's here with us tonight to share with us his positions on affordable housing. So Mayor Peake, you have 2 minutes to present your policy platform.
Thank you, Barbara, and thanks for having me. And one of my top 3 goals is adding affordable housing. So this is near and dear to me. Before I speak further, I want to recognize our staff, Anastasia Aziz, Terry Schaefer, and Allison Hunter, who have been working very hard diligently on adding housing, and particularly encouraging ADUs, which has been happening, and also housing rehabilitation, allowing for low-income residents whose houses need to be brought up to code to be able to do that. So early this year, the city kicked off a housing study. And the reason for that was to look at a very broad set of housing tools or processes that we could use to increase affordable housing. And we contracted with Barrett and Driscoll, a housing experts, to assist our city staff in this effort. The first and foremost is to identify what are all the tools that we might look at. And there's a considerable array of housing tools. You've heard comments, and they've been listed by other speakers earlier. But the other part, which is just as important, is engaging the community and finding out which tools they support. And then lastly, of those tools, what tools will be the most effective? And so we've got those three balls to juggle right now. We're in the middle of this study, and we're soliciting community buy-in and feedback. And in this manner, we hope also to obtain more community buy-in. And I've listed on this slide the strategy toolkit, and I won't go into many details, but just basically land use tools are tools to encourage or facilitate more housing. That's, for example, building on smaller lots or smaller units. Programs and financial tools, that's where the city can provide financial assistance to people to help them stay in their housing or add housing. Partnerships and use of public lands. This one's come up time and again. It's using public lands as a place to put in affordable housing with a nonprofit.
Mayor Peake, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're over your 2-minute limit.
Okay.
But I do appreciate all that thoroughness. And also, you mentioned a survey the community can provide input to. I assume that's a survey they can access on the city website?
Yeah, so actually we have a separate website, but if you go to the city website and you look for housing, affordable housing, you'll find a link to a separate website collecting feedback. There's a lot of information there for the public.
Okay, encourage our listeners from Pacific Grove to engage in the city and sharing their ideas and input through that survey. So thank you, Mayor Peake. We'll be back in touch with you in a few minutes as we look at the specific questions. But let's turn now to the other council candidates that are with us tonight. And we'll start with Mr. Scott Miller, if you'll let us know your positions on affordable housing.
Very good. Can you hear and see me yet?
Yes, both.
Very good. Hi, thanks for hosting this really important forum this evening. It's a pleasure and a privilege to follow Mayor Peake after his comments, and I look forward to getting elected to City Council so that I can work with Mayor Peake on some of these mutual goals that we have in terms of housing. Just to differentiate myself from other Millers that may be running for various offices this election and previous elections. My name is Scott Miller, candidate for Pacific Grove City Council. I'm the retired Monterey County Sheriff Coroner. I was elected as Monterey County Sheriff in 2010. Before that, I was elected to the Pacific Grove City Council in 2004, and from then to 2008 served a term. The last 2 years as Mayor Pro Tem. I served 6 years as the police chief of the city of Pacific Grove. And I've spent 35 years in local government, 22 years at the executive level. You see my slide there, you can tell that technologically I'm not the most gifted PowerPoint slide maker, but my heart is sincere. I believe it's important that we work regionally to develop an adequate, affordable, and sustainable water supply, which drives much of the availability of affordable housing construction in the future. I think it's really important that we facilitate the responsible development of accessory dwelling units. And in Pacific Grove, we have a couple of opportunities. We are very much landlocked with very few opportunities to have land that's available for any kind of developmental reasons. But we do have Mission Linen parcel that's being added to hopefully to the city through the process of getting that from the county. And I think we also need to examine the potential for mixed-use retail and housing projects downtown. And for example, the city-owned parking lot behind Lighthouse Cinemas, where that would be appropriate for live above, retail below. I think that would be something that we could really look in the future. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. Those are great concrete ideas. Next, we'll listen to Chap Spaduri.
Hi, can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes, and yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I know this slide looks a lot for 7:30 p.m. So I'm going to try to make my best to explain what is going on here. So first of all, thank you for everybody for having me. And so as a quick backdrop for the slide, the housing problem itself, one is water. CalAm is under a cease and desist order, and therefore there's a moratorium on all new water connections. What Pacific Grove has done is it has successfully completed a recycled water project, and as a result, the city is able to sell water entitlements. Today, 11.5 acre feet of water has been set aside towards affordable housing from that initiative. And to contrast this with the RHNA needs, the city has met 61% of the RHNA needs as of end of year 2019. The remaining 39% has to be met by end of year 2023. The interesting thing there is that more than half of what is remaining to be done are actually housing permits for very low income segments. Now, if you look at it from an owner standpoint, the ADU process requires a number of steps. You got to have a plan, a permit, a developer, financing. So what I'm proposing here with this slide is really a one-stop shop owner experience that I believe will speed up the units to be created. So the proposal is built upon collaboration, which actually form the pillars here, with the CDFI, with the financial institution for structuring a financial instrument, and with a community-based developer to have several models and designs. And the base for all of this is really to have pro-ADU policies in place, partnerships like MBEP, and to have community support. And what I do see is that the data that is gathered through any such foundational steps can in turn be used for transparency as well as for community action. All in all, what I know is that we need to meet the RHNA needs, but what we really need to do is we should strive to exceed them. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you so much. Next, we'd like to look at the questions that we asked each of you to respond to. And I'll just read them real quickly, similar to what we've done, asking about the reduction or waiving of parking requirements. Oh, that's the city of Carmel, but we mean city of Pacific Grove. What about the idea of supporting an increased transit occupancy tax to fund affordable housing specifically? Would you support a bond measure to fund housing for the Pacific Grove Unified School District employees? And what about the idea of an inclusionary housing ordinance in Pacific Grove? And fifth, do you support the enactment of local emergency eviction moratorium that goes beyond the state protections and restricts rent increases during the pandemic emergency? And finally, do you support Proposition 15, known as the Schools and Communities First? So these are the questions we asked, and Emmy, what did they say in response?
Yeah, so it looks like a good variation in these responses, but I'm hoping if that you could just clarify something really quick. We asked most of the candidates tonight about their opinions on a local eviction moratorium and whether or not it should go beyond state protections. And I'm hoping, just because it's such a timely issue, that you can just elaborate a little bit more on what state protection is in place and when city councils might have the opportunity in the future to go beyond this state protection.
Right, that's a good question, because I think it's been a little bit unclear as we've heard some of the responses from the earlier candidates. What is going on currently? Well, and first of all, I very much appreciate the leadership that each of the city councils and the counties in the region have taken as the pandemic started to put in place local moratoriums. And then with the state moratorium ordinance, when it expired and we were on the verge of the last few days of the legislature, they passed AB 3088. And that is a statewide moratorium on evictions as this pandemic continues that is in place until February 1. And during this time, and that AB 308 said, anyone who is behind on paying rent because of COVID, because they've lost job, lost hours, lost income, cannot be evicted for that reason. And then anyone from September 1 through February 1 in that similar position has to at least pay 25% of their rent for the eviction moratorium for them to be eligible for that and not be evicted if they pay at least 25% of that debt or rent between now and February 1. However, come February 1, time's up. This was a stopgap measure put in place by the state legislature. And I don't believe that things are all going to be hunky-dory come February 1. The time will be up and the debt will be in place. And so the essence of starting this discussion now with you as candidates is to find out what happens next. And would you be willing to put into place, once the state moratorium is lifted, continue to protect our tenants locally, specifically those hospitality workers who are without work right now? And would you also help to figure out how might we prevent increases in rent for those tenants right now? City of Monterey did pass that local provision. And then how are we going to deal with the debt? We need to be working on some long-term strategies here. So that's what MVEP is interested in discussing with our future elected officials come November.
Great.
Does that help, Emily?
Yes, that helps a lot. I think it's a really important clarification to make right now. So it seems like we have a few differences of opinion on that question, and I'm hoping maybe candidates can elaborate a little bit on why they responded the way that they did. But I guess we'll let them take it away again.
Right. So we will begin with each of the candidates in the same order. You will have 3 minutes to elaborate on your position on the question of local eviction extension, as well as stopping any rent increases during this time, and then any of the other issues that you would like to elaborate on. You'll each have 3 minutes, and I will cut you off if you go on, as you've discovered. So thank you very much. And we'll start with Mayor Peake.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, the AB 3088 went through the legislature very recently, and there was a considerable amount of back and forth to get it passed. And so the two sides of this are, well, obviously the help of people that are in renters that are in financial distress, but then the other side is what about the property owners and their expenses, property taxes, utilities, and mortgage payments that they're paying. So I think that what the legislature came up with is a reasonable exercise or a reasonable compromise on this for now. And going forward, I could support a local eviction moratorium if the city or the county or state were willing to advance monies to help property owners that would fall into financial distress if a few properties, the small mom and pop property owners, if they didn't get the rent checks, do they fall in financial distress? So if the government can come in and help them so we don't lose people unnecessarily, I would be in support. And let's see, how much more time have I got?
I would say just keep going until my colleague here chats with me to tell me.
No, I think it just bears repeating for Pacific Grove as to why we should have more affordable housing. And the two main reasons that I believe we need it is for housing for local workers and also housing for the younger generation. Both groups of people are being priced out of Pacific Grove, and over time it's having a dramatic impact on our town and the social fabric of town. And, there's lots of reasons to be concerned about it. Certainly there's environmental reasons. People have to drive farther. We have traffic and street congestion, and also the societal issues of it would be great to have family nearby instead of having to visit and drive in. And then for the local small business employers, they need a workforce, and it's more difficult to get employees if the employees have to commute long distances to get to Pacific Grove. So for all those reasons, affordable housing makes sense for Pacific Grove, and we need to continue to work on that.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Peake. Really appreciate you being with us tonight.
You're
Next, Next, we will hear from Scott Miller. And Scott, you'll have 3 minutes to elaborate on these questions we gave you, as well as anything else you'd like to share with us as it relates to housing.
Thank you, Barbara. And again, I appreciate the explanation that Mayor Peake gave in terms of the local eviction moratorium. I think the protections from the state are very strong for now. And I think it's something that if it's still going in the direction it is, that we can revisit it towards the end of the year. But I think for now, there is that balance between the property owner and the tenant. And my experience in Pacific Grove has been that I've seen tenants and property owners work well together to police themselves on this, and it's worked out really well in conjunction with the state guidance. In terms of a couple of the other things I mentioned, the PGUSD bond measure, I see I was the only no of the three of us. Well, my point there is I always have an open mind, and I believe in discussing things with the stakeholders. If retaining teachers in Pacific Grove was a real problem, then that might be, and if housing was a major issue, that would be something that we could certainly work on, talk together. My understanding is PGUSD pays their teachers substantially more than, say, MPUSD. And I have a sister-in-law that works for MPUSD. And I think that we may not have those same retention problems. So that's why I said no on that, although I love and support teachers, pay, benefits, everything they can, so that they may be able to decide where they would like to live themselves. In terms of raising the TOT, I think, again, speaking with the stakeholders, we just raised the TOT in support of removing the short-term rentals from the majority of abodes here in Pacific Grove, and that did free up substantial housing that is, in fact, largely affordable. So I think we need to talk before we go about raising TOT yet again. It's actually very high now. We've raised it several times over recent years. The same goes for that bond measure as well. We're paying a number of high-priced bonds right now through the school district, and that worked into my thinking there as well. Other than that, Prop 15, yeah, I think right now we don't need that hit on our commercial operators there that are coming out of this COVID mess that we find ourselves in. So bottom line, I look forward to serving on the city council if elected. I've enjoyed my previous service, public service, and my previous time on the city council. I'll bring my 35 years of public sector experience to bear in helping to balance future budgets and make sure revenues and expenditures match each other. I've worked on budgets up to $80 million, and I've supervised workforces in excess of 400 employees. I'd love to serve my hometown, the city of Pacific Grove, on the city council. And thank you for hosting this evening.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Appreciate your elaborating on these positions and for running for public office. Last but not least, Mr. Chaps-Frederi, would you care to elaborate on our questions and anything else you'd like to share with us in the final 3 minutes?
Yes, I'm not able to start my video. Okay, there you go.
We've got you.
All right, fantastic. So I'll just go one by one as to how I arrived at the conclusion. So waiving the parking requirements, I believe that in general, any incentives encourage more development. So parking reduction or waiver is one. We could also consider other things like reduced setback So in general, I'm supportive of that. The TOT increase, I said yes in light of a lot of things. One, I do think that considering how 2020 has gone, we should look for any TOT increases if they're being considered to also include other essentials such as say disaster, fires, pandemic planning, etc. If you're looking at what has happened with the city, combined with the projected losses due to Measure M, the city's TOT revenue is expected to decline by $3 million in fiscal year 20/21. So in general, I'm supportive of it, but I do want other things to play out with it as well. With the PGUSD bond measure, in general, I view general obligation bonds as having more oversight protections and transparency to fund a specific outcome. So contrast this with the TOT. I don't think that has that much transparency going in there. But I do think the bond measure, apart from the housing factor, it will allow the district to retain the teachers. It will also allow the district to stay competitive, which I think is important. The inclusionary ordinance, that is a fundamental aspect. We should be committed to affordable housing across all fronts, and we should start from policymaking. The AB 3088, so I did mark this as yes, but I do want to view this enactment in terms of another assembly bill, the AB 1482, which actually defines the limits to rent increases. I would like to see how this bill contrasts with whatever is already in place, and why is that bill not being taken into consideration. And then finally, Prop 15, I think we've heard it from a lot of other candidates. It's really not coming at the right time. There's also something called a triple net lease structure, which is really popular in real estate, and it doesn't appear to have been accounted for in the proposition, which I think will unfortunately cause undue burden to tenants, which is why I'm abstaining. Certainly has a mixture of elements where schools benefit or businesses kind of thing, but I don't think it's coming at the right time. As to closing, I do think that the pandemic has highlighted why housing at all levels is so important. We cannot function without essential workers, and we need to protect the community while producing more housing. And we really need to start by examining housing policies. So you can find more about me at chapsforpg.com. Thank you for your vote, and especially for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maduri. And thank you to all of our PG City Council candidates and Mayor Peake for your leadership, your willingness to serve, and for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us tonight. I hope you feel like this has been very productive for you, and I hope our viewing audience feels the same. And before I turn it back to you, Emmy, I would also like to encourage everybody to be aware next week ballots get mailed out. And we will all be voting by mail this year. The state is sending out ballots to all of us, regardless of whether we're a poll voter like I am. And the County of Monterey has prepared several drop-off locations for that. And early voting will start as soon as you get your ballot. And there will be a location here on the peninsula at Embassy Suites in Seaside to drop off there, as well as the county office. And it's election season starting Monday. No longer it's election day, it's a whole season. So thank you again, candidates from Pacific Grove. Really appreciate it. I'll turn it to you, Emmy, to close.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Barbara. I think you really hit the nail on the head. We have to get ourselves ready for election season, make sure we're registered, make sure we know where to submit our ballots to. And just like a virtual election forum, there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve to voting this year. So we want to make sure that we're all prepared. I once again want to thank the candidates that were here tonight. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your effort on this forum. We understand that your time is valuable right now and there are a million things to juggle, but we do appreciate your commitment to make sure that your voters are educated and knowledgeable about where you stand on housing issues. So thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to add before closing out, Barbara?
Just that whoever gets elected, we look forward to working with you on these issues. And yes, there's some differences of opinion or perspective, but all these ideas are very important for us to dig into with whoever gets elected. So we look forward to working with you in the coming months and years.
Absolutely. And with that, we wish you a good evening, and we will see you at our upcoming election forums. If you might be voting in a different jurisdiction, you can check them all out on our website, mbep.biz, and register for one of those forums. Otherwise, happy voting season, and we will talk to you soon.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Barbara and Noya.
Thank you.